With the PlayStation 5 set to release during the holiday season this year, the one game I'm looking forward to playing the most on the next-gen console is the sequel to Marvel's Spider-Man. And just like I did with the PlayStation 4, the release of the next Spider-Man game will determine when I'll be picking up the PS5, which according to a recent leak, we may or may not have gotten correct information on when the game will be releasing for the PlayStation 5, along with what the story holds for the next Spider-Man game. And let's talk about it. So according to one Reddit user who was apparently right about the Resident Evil 3 remake happening before it was officially announced, the Spider-Man PS4 sequel is set to release holiday 2021 with a reveal trailer later this year. Now take this as you will, since anyone could post anything to Reddit and claim they're leaking it from a close source, but personally I don't think it's that far-fetched to believe the game will be releasing by holiday 2021. In fact, I think that's the furthest we could expect the game to be released, since I remember doing a video a while back about developers already being given PS5 dev kits to test, and from then and Christmas next year, I think that's long enough to work on a game. And as far as the trailer being released this year, I think that's something very plausible, with it either being included during the console reveal or something similar to the state of play that Sony's been doing. Spider-Man PS4's reveal was 2 years before the release of the game, and if holiday 2021 ends up being correct, then the first reveal of the game would be just under 2 years from release. Moving on from the game's possible release date, the user also included a lot of details relating to the game's upgrade from the first, villains, characters, and more. First, the user explains that the game's Manhattan will be built off of Spider-Man PS4's, expanded with Queens and Brooklyn taking place during the wintertime. I would expect Insomniac to build off of the first game's city with a few upgrades that make it different enough from Spider-Man PS4, and the addition of Queens and Brooklyn is something that I feel was missing from the first game. If Ultimate Spider-Man that came out over 10 years ago can include Queens, there's no reason why a game releasing in 2021 potentially can't include Queens or even Brooklyn. It's also interesting that the only two boroughs being added are Queens and Brooklyn, since these are the homes of Miles and Peter, and overall I think we need to see at least one of these boroughs available to explore. Also, with the possibility of the next game taking place during the winter, this is something I'd love to see for the next game. We've never had a Spider-Man game where it snows, and just imagine how great a winter night would look swinging through the city. Up next, the user does provide some details on the game's story, but they're said to be scarce on the user's part, with Oscorp playing a large role throughout the story, and even the mention of cloning being present in the game. Which I hope isn't true. The clone saga is a big mess, and maybe a reference to it would be nice, but personally I'm not looking forward to the possibility of the clone saga being included. The game is also supposed to hint towards a larger Marvel world, just like with the first game, but the first game already did this, so why not include a character from the larger Marvel world instead of just hinting once again? Some of the villains the Reddit leaker list in their post include the likes of Venom, Green Goblin, Carnage, Mysterio, the Lizard, Cardiac, and a few more. And I don't know who the hell Cardiac is, but all of these villains seem to be likely in the game, especially since all of them but Cardiac and Carnage were hinted at in the first game. The user also mentions Miles' role in the story being similar to how it was handled in the first game, but this time around he's Spider-Man with different powers and skill sets from Peter's. However, the user emphasizes on Peter still being the main focus for this game. New characters that may or may not be in this game include Flash Thompson, Harry Osborn, Ben Ulrich, Aaron Davis, Eddie Brock, and more. With the user not mentioning Aaron Davis being a villain of the game, it makes me wonder if they're saving Miles vs. the Prowler for a third game, DLC, or maybe it's just something that they forgot to include when talking about villains, which kind of takes away from the credibility of this post, doesn't it? I also like the inclusion of characters relating to the symbiote, Flash Thompson and Eddie Brock, and if you haven't seen it, I have a personal theory video on how I think Eddie Brock could become Venom. Moving on towards the end of the supposed leak, the user mentions the random crime gameplay similar to Diablo's Dungeons mechanics, and I'll just go ahead and repeat what was written since I have no experience in playing any of the Diablo games. Spawning in different types of crimes in different situations with randomized encounters. For example, a bank robbery might occur, but it will differ in enemy placement, different type of combat encounter, different types of enemies, different combat layout and mini objectives, etc. This will be featured all throughout the game's crime system, varying each encounter for a high replay ability. So from the sounds of it, randomized crimes will have a higher replay value than they do in the previous game, which is something that I feel is needed for the next game, because to be honest, the randomized crimes for the first game became easily predictable once everything to do in the game was done, and overall I find everything included in this supposed leak to be likely, considering I don't think the game will be releasing in 2022. Like I said, holiday 2021 is the latest I can see the game being released. An upgrade to the game city is obvious, and the inclusion of at least one explorable borough is something that I feel is needed, since there's no excuse why a game that came out over 10 years ago can include queens but a game with superior technology can't. As far as the characters being included from this post, I find all of them except Carnage and Cardiac to be predictable due to hints from the previous game and tie-in comics, but I would also like to know if this guy had any details on MJ being a part of the game, since it wasn't mentioned whether she will be absent or not. I know towards the end of Spider-Man PS4 she goes to Simcaria, but things can change and maybe we'll have MJ missions over there, or maybe she's back in New York, who knows. But let me know what you guys think about these supposed leaks regarding the game's release date and what the game will entail. Again, these leaks may or may not be true. I'm simply reporting on it and giving my thoughts on them. This is something that's been picked up by a few websites, and I also thought it would be cool to do a video on and spawn discussion. And as always, thanks for watching. Be sure to subscribe, follow my social medias, and I will see you guys again in my next video.